right now.
Yeah.
That's just a normal thing when death occurs. It's just like, I ain't gonna say it's wrong to show love, but if it ain't genuine, why do it? Like, if it ain't real, like, you know what I'm saying?
The streets lit up the moment Key Glock finally spoke on the tension, betrayal, and unanswered questions surrounding Young Dolph's death. For years, Glock stayed silent, moving in the shadows, staying focused, refusing to let the world drag him into the messy politics that erupted after Dolph was taken. But recently, something shifted. Glock's tone changed. His interviews became heavier, his music sharper, and fans started noticing coded messages, emotional pauses, and truths wrapped inside verses that revealed just how deep the wounds still run. People said Glock flipped on PRE, but the reality is more complicated. He didn't turn on the label, he turned on the silence. He turned on the fake loyalty. He turned on the narrative that everything was good when it wasn't. And that shift set the entire internet on fire. What Glock made clear is this: Dolph's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a spiritual earthquake. It shook Memphis, it shook PRE, it shook the rap game. And for the first time, Glock let people see how much pressure he's been carrying.
How are you holding up? I mean, obviously, something that's...
I'm content. I'm all right.
When you say content, what does that mean? Like,
I'm maintaining. Like, I'm not getting better, I'm not getting worse, I'm just...
The weight of being the last one standing. The weight of keeping the brand alive. The weight of being Dolph's right hand, cousin, and heir to an empire suddenly left without its king. Fans watched Glock navigate grief in real time, all while holding down the biggest independent brand in the South. But beneath the calm exterior, there was hurt, confusion, and frustration at how people switched up after Dolph's passing. Glock didn't point fingers, he didn't accuse specific names. Instead, he talked about energy, about people acting different before and after Dolph's death. He spoke on individuals who smiled in Dolph's face but moved strange behind the scenes. He didn't say they were responsible, but he made it clear there were people Dolph didn't trust toward the end. Glock mentioned how Dolph warned him about certain folks, how he kept his circle small, and how fame attracted snakes, leeches, and opportunists pretending to be family. Glock's comments didn't confirm betrayal, they highlighted how betrayal felt. And when someone close to a tragedy speaks on the emotional truth, the internet runs with it. That's exactly what happened. Fans started connecting dots, dissecting lyrics, rewatching old clips, and debating who Glock was hinting at. Some pointed to tensions inside PRE. Others speculated about people Dolph had issues with back in Memphis. But Glock wasn't naming names. He was expressing the pain of losing someone who meant everything. The pain of feeling like Dolph saw something coming but couldn't stop it. The pain of watching people capitalize off the tragedy instead of honoring the legacy. Glock's flip wasn't a betrayal. It was an eruption of honesty after years of pressure. To understand why Glock's comments hit so hard, you have to understand the weight Dolph carried in his final years. Dolph lived with paranoia, caution, and strategy because he knew the streets weren't clean. He had already survived multiple attempts on his life, and Glock hinted that Dolph recognized the difference between genuine love and disguised hatred.
Jury found the defendant Hernandez-Govan not guilty in count 1 of the indictment. We, the jury, find the defendant Hernandez-Govan not guilty in count 2 of the indictment. Ms. Johnson, is this your verdict? Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Dolph's success, independence, and refusal to bow down made him a target, not just to enemies, but to industry politics that never wanted him self-made and outspoken. Glock revealed that Dolph used to say he felt chosen out, meaning he knew the spotlight came with a price. And Glock learned to navigate that same atmosphere as Dolph's closest partner. When fans say Glock revealed betrayal, what he truly revealed was energy imbalance inside the circle. Not a confession, not an accusation, a shift in loyalty that Dolph sensed early. Glock spoke about how people who once praised Dolph later distanced themselves, how individuals claiming to represent the brand weren't moving with integrity, and how certain alliances Dolph rejected suddenly resurfaced after his death. These observations weren't proof of wrongdoing. They reflected Glock's emotional truth, shaped by grief, suspicion, and the chaos that followed Dolph's murder. Glock also talked about how people treated him differently once Dolph passed. Some tried to push him into leadership roles he wasn't ready for. Others tried to manipulate him into signing paperwork or engaging in deals that Dolph had previously warned him about. Opportunists saw Glock as vulnerable, grieving, young, isolated, and attempted to fill the power vacuum left behind. Glock didn't say they were betrayers. He said they were opportunists. And in the rap world, opportunism often feels identical to betrayal. Puri fans began speculating about internal tension, artists moving independently, social media posts with strange undertones, and a lack of public unity compared to the early years. Some believed the empire Dolph built was showing cracks. Others believed Glock was stepping into his own identity and distancing himself from negativity. But Glock made it clear his loyalty was always to Dolph, not to the noise surrounding the label. And if he sensed someone wasn't moving in Dolph's spirit, he cut them off.
That's just a normal thing when death occurs. It's just like, I ain't gonna say it's wrong to show love, but if it ain't genuine, why do it? Like, if it ain't real, like, you know what I'm saying? So everybody know, like I know, like you know, then fuck with bro, like.
One of the biggest moments came when Glock addressed the fake love surrounding Dolph's death. He explained how people who never showed support began pretending they were close to Dolph for clout, how artists who never collaborated suddenly posted long emotional tributes, how enemies tried rewriting history. Glock's frustration wasn't about Puri, it was about the circus that forms around any major tragedy in hip-hop. People monetize grief, people monetize legends, people monetize narratives. Glock watched all of it unfold and stayed silent until now. Glock's revelations weren't about exposing individuals, they were about exposing the culture of disloyalty surrounding Dolph's final chapter. What shook fans the most was Glock addressing the period right before Dolph's passing. He said Dolph had been distant, protective, and strategic about who he allowed near him. He was building wealth, buying properties, structuring generational ownership, and preparing to uplift his entire circle. But at the same time, he was cutting off certain people whose intentions he questioned. Glock spoke on this indirectly, saying Dolph knew who was real and who wasn't, and that he kept his business airtight for a reason. Again, Glock wasn't accusing anyone of orchestrating anything. He was describing Dolph's mindset, the emotional climate, and the warning signs Dolph sensed around him. Fans quickly began dissecting these comments as clues, not because Glock pointed at anyone, but because people have been searching for meaning ever since Dolph was taken. The streets of Memphis were buzzing with theories, narratives, and long-standing conflicts that gave people multiple directions to speculate. But Glock chose a different route. He didn't feed into street conspiracies. He focused on emotional betrayal, not physical betrayal. He talked about the disappointment of realizing people around Dolph didn't value him the way he deserved. People who benefited but didn't protect. People who smiled but didn't defend. People who claimed him after death but ignored him while alive. Glock also opened up about his own isolation after Dolph's passing, how he withdrew from the world, canceled shows, stopped talking, and cut communication with most people. He said letting people close felt dangerous, not physically but emotionally, because once trust breaks, even the loyal ones seem suspicious. Glock wasn't flipping on Puri. He was describing the loneliness that comes with losing someone who protected and guided him. Dolph wasn't just a cousin, he was the shield, mentor, and voice of wisdom behind Glock's moves. This emotional distance is what fans interpreted as Glock separating himself from Puri.
We haven't really heard much from you since the tragic passing of Dolph. Is this the first time that you've done an interview since he passed?
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you holding up? I mean, obviously something that's...
I'm content. I'm all right.
When you say content, what does that mean? Like
I'm maintaining. Like I'm not getting better. I'm not getting worse. I'm just here. Right?
Puri continued business, continued signing artists, continued pushing Dolph's legacy forward, but Glock wasn't always present in those activities. Some took that as tension, others saw it as grief. The truth is simpler. Glock didn't want to function in a world where Dolph's presence was missing, so he moved solo, not out of betrayal, but out of necessity. As Glock returned to music, listeners noticed a shift. His lyrics grew darker, his tone colder. His themes centered around loyalty, disappointment, and survivor's guilt. Every bar carried pain the public could feel. Glock wasn't revealing crime. He was revealing heartbreak. He was explaining how betrayal isn't always a setup. Sometimes it's watching people pretend they cared only after it's too late. Sometimes betrayal is silence, absence, and fake emotions disguised as sympathy. And Glock wasn't afraid to admit that part out loud. The fourth major wave of Glock's commentary came when he addressed the industry as a whole. Not just PRE, not just Memphis, but the broader entertainment world surrounding Dolph. He spoke about how labels tried to approach him during his most vulnerable moments, how executives pitched deals designed to capitalize on the sympathy wave, and how people pushed narratives that didn't reflect reality. Glock said the industry loves tragedy because tragedy sells. They love legends because legends can be monetized forever. And they love silence because silence allows them to rewrite stories. Glock breaking that silence created tension. Glock spoke about how Dolph's independent status made him a threat. Dolph fought major labels, rejected multi-million-dollar deals, and built something corporate America couldn't control. When someone like that dies, companies rush to position themselves as allies, even if they had nothing to do with the legacy during the person's life. Glock expressed frustration at seeing people try to brand themselves as part of Dolph's story. He said Dolph didn't trust the industry, and Dolph warned Glock not to let industry pressure swallow him whole. This is where Glock's comments began sounding like revelations to fans. Not because he accused anyone, but because he exposed systems, power structures, money motives, and relationship imbalances. Glock revealed Dolph had enemies in business long before he had enemies in the streets. People resented his independence. People resented his refusal to conform. People resented his loyalty to Memphis instead of chasing Hollywood validation. And Glock watched these same people pretend to mourn after Dolph died. He didn't call them traitors, but he called them liars. And for fans, that felt like the bombshell they'd been waiting for. Glock also made it clear he wasn't going to let PRE collapse. He said Dolph built an empire for a reason, and that artists under the label needed direction, unity, and strength, not drama. He didn't say PRE betrayed him, he said PRE needed to refocus. Glock's frustration wasn't with the label. It was with the people outside the label who tried to divide it. He insisted that Dolph stood for loyalty, and anything contradicting that was not part of the brand he vowed to protect. This moment recontextualized everything. Glock wasn't flipping on PRE, he was protecting PRE from the outside noise. His message wasn't someone inside set Dolph up. His message was people outside pretended to love him. And in an era where fans crave dramatic answers, Glock reminded them that sometimes the truth is emotional, not criminal. When Glock finally spoke on the betrayal people keep asking about, he made one thing crystal clear. The real betrayal wasn't a single person or a specific act. The real betrayal was how the world treated Dolph before and after his passing. Dolph was undervalued while alive, overpraised when gone, and exploited at every step. Glock explained how people ignored Dolph's warnings, disrespected his independence, and tried to use his name for personal gain. None of this pointed to a setup. It pointed to a pattern of fake loyalty that surrounded Dolph's career. Glock said the betrayal he witnessed came from three places. 1. People who didn't protect Dolph when he gave them opportunities. 2. People who switched their energy when fame entered the picture. 3. People who pretended to mourn him once cameras were rolling. Those weren't accusations. Those were emotional reflections. Grief turned suspicion into memory, and memory into lessons. Glock learned who stood beside Dolph for real and who stood beside the spotlight only. And that realization is what fans interpreted as Glock revealing who betrayed Dolph. Glock's message wasn't about identifying a culprit. It was about exposing the culture of proximity, the people who stayed close enough to benefit but far enough to avoid responsibility. Glock said Dolph never trusted easily, and that he cut people off long before his passing because he sensed their intentions. So when Glock talked about betrayal, he talked about the betrayal Dolph already recognized. To Glock, betrayal wasn't the moment Dolph died. Betrayal was everything that happened before he died. The industry politics, the opportunistic friendships, the disloyal partnerships, the fake support, the hidden envy. Those are the forces Glock was calling out. In the end, Glock's revelations weren't about creating a suspect list. They were about protecting Dolph's legacy from manipulation. And for fans, these comments filled the emotional void left by years of unanswered questions. Not because Glock exposed a villain, but because he exposed the atmosphere Dolph lived in, an atmosphere full of pressure, jealousy, and deception. Glock made it clear he won't let anyone rewrite Dolph's story, twist the narrative, or disrespect the empire Dolph built. His outburst wasn't anger toward PRE, it was defense of PRE. His frustration wasn't toward Dolph's circle, it was toward the outsiders who tried to infiltrate it. And his truth wasn't about accusing individuals, it was about exposing intentions. If you enjoyed this breakdown of loyalty, legacy, and the deeper truths surrounding Young Dolph's impact, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more real commentary, street-level analysis, and culture-defining conversations.